Well, we are just talking about CP3. Let's jump right to him.
Mm.
I'm just going to give it to you. What are the strengths and weaknesses for Chris Paul at the point guard position at 39 years old, playing with this San Antonio Spurs team and Victor Wembanyama?
Right. Well, as what I would say the starting point guard that I would think, or I think he would be the starting point guard going into the season. His strengths are obvious: playmaking, confidence, IQ, having everybody on the team in the right place at the right time, and being a veteran presence both on and off the court. And I think the biggest thing is kind of an intangible. He will not tolerate a losing mentality. He is all about competing and trying to win, and he made that very clear in his opening press conference with the Spurs. He's not here to kind of rest on his loyals. Is that how you say it? Rest on his
Laurels,
laurels.
laurels.
Rest on his laurels. He is not here to do that. He is here to prove again that he is a competitive, high level point guard, and to kind of lead the way for the Spurs moving into the next chapter of their franchise. Weaknesses are going to be obvious. He's not the same athletic point guard that he once was. I don't think he's going to be an elite scorer like he once was. I think he will really just be a facilitator, a floor general, and occasionally hit a mid-range jumper or a floater in the lane. I don't envision him getting like 15 points per game. He'll probably be anywhere from 10 to 13 points per game. But I don't even know if you can call that a weakness. I think that's just the reality of where he is at 39 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. A lot of stuff that I'll say will be similar. The main thing for me, I'm just excited for us to run like a legit Greg Popovich offense, like
Mm,
where we have somebody who's orchestrating sets, we're calling out plays, really facilitating. I don't want to take too much away from Trey Jones because we'll get into him later as well. And you and I and a lot of people in the comments, we're very happy with the way that he finished the season. But at the same time, Chris Paul is just a different level of player than
right.
than a Trey Jones, especially when it comes to being one of the best point guards of all time. So as much as it is a 39-year-old Chris Paul, there are so many intangible things that he can teach these guys and that he can see on the court. The way that he's going to place Wemby on the floor, I think, is going to make Victor's job so much easier. The spacing, I mean, every offensive like I said, just action that you can have, whether it's in a set or, even in like a little freelance pick and roll play. It's just, I think it's going to be much more smooth and much more connected
Mm,
with Chris Paul at the helm of the offense.
100%. I like the way you put that. Connected. He will make this team 100% more connected.
Yes, the spacing is another thing that stands out to me as well. And just talking about him offensively, as much as you mentioned it there, um, the floaters and the mid range, I think that there's a lot of times where we haven't been able to make people pay in those situations where I think Chris Paul can. And I think if they leave him open as
Mhm.
well on the 3 point line, that's another person who is at least, consistently throughout his career, even at 39 years old, been more consistent than Trey Jones, as much as we really liked Trey Jones's end of the season shooting wise. Does that make sense there?
100%. And I was rewatching a playoff game in 2015, Spurs versus Clippers. This dude was lacing it from deep. And I've always remembered him being a guy that can knock down an open jump shot. So I'm not worried about his floor spacing at all. And just to touch on one thing that neither of us did just now is his defense. Or sorry, did you get into his weaknesses yet?
I did not. I did
Okay,
not.
then let me flow it back to you because I'm sure you'll bring it up.
Well, no, honestly, you can jump right into the defense, man.
All I was gonna say is defensively, sure, he doesn't have the same step to kind of keep up with a lot of these high athletic guards. I'm thinking Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, guys like that, Luka Doncic. However, he's still one of the highest IQ help defenders of all time. And as far as communication and forcing guys to be in the right spot, he is elite. So in that regard, I think we'll be better. But as far as just physically one-on-one sitting in the chair, it'll probably be just about the same as it's been in the past with Trey Jones.
I think that's a very fair point. When it comes to him, the only weaknesses that you can say, it's not because of anything skill based. It's literally just because he's 39 years old.
Mhm.
Um, and that just comes down to athleticism, quickness, a lot of the guards that we've talked about in this league. But I think, it'll be interesting to see what we do with who defends some of those guys. This kind of goes back to the whole Sohan thing. Maybe we will still see a little bit of that as much as we did expect to see Stefan Castle doing much more of that this season when he got drafted. But at that time, we didn't realize we were going to sign Chris Paul.
Right.
So, next season, we will see Stephon Castle taking on those guys, completely. And maybe we do see some rotations where we have some spot minutes with both of those guys on the floor. And Stephon can pick up some of those guys. But again, it just really comes down to defense. And it's like you said, it's not an IQ thing, it's not a communication thing. It's just an athleticism thing for a 39-year-old. And the,
Exactly.
the one thing I want to touch on when you talked about communication, I know we've mentioned this in past episodes, but if you guys haven't seen it, go check out the video that Wake Forest posted when CP3 went to practice, because he talked to the team and it's on video, and he's saying, hey, like, y'all are good defenders. Y'all just got to communicate. Y'all don't talk. That is exactly what you just kind of hit on there.
Mm,
And I think if he can influence the rest of the team to do that, that will improve our team defense, which will therefore kind of help him out in a way as well.
100% agreed.
But we got a comment here from our boy Cowboy Tanaka. He says, how easy would the transition to a young team for
Mm,
CP3 be? Will he connect to the roster? I'll answer this one first, Ethan. Because he chose to do this and was convinced to do it by Pop, he talked about that in his presser over the summer after he signed. And he also talked about playing time, how that was something that was really important for him in this stage of his career. This kind of goes back to what I just mentioned with the Wake Forest practice. He wants to be a coach. This is almost not to say he's going to be an assistant coach, but he almost kind of will to an extent. And it goes back to when Tony Parker said he didn't want to be an assistant coach, which is why he went to the Charlotte Hornets. I know I'm kind of going all over the place there, but back
mm,
to Chris Paul, again, he wanted to do this. The appeal of Victor Wembanyama, um, and the fact that like this was his decision gives
mhm.
me confidence that he's going to be okay with this. I know we talked about it. There probably still will be some little things that come out about maybe him getting into it with some guys at practice and stuff. We made that prediction in the last episode. But at the end of the day, that's just going to be to push the guys, which is exactly what Greg Popovich would do as well, in a sense, whenever it's getting on to guys in practice. So I think because he wants to have that career in coaching, and this was something that he had a lot of other teams that he could have gone to, or maybe not a lot, but he had a handful of other teams that he could have gone to, I'm sure, and decided to do this. That gives me confidence that he's going to be able to connect to this roster. Another thing, Chris Paul does have an AAU team,
Right.
and he's had that for a while. And I know that the AAU guys are obviously younger than the Spurs roster, but still, he has a lot of experience coaching and connecting with young players as well.
I'll put it simple. He did it already. He did it with OKC and he did it again with Phoenix. So he can do it with us.
Yeah, the Shea Gilgeous thing, I forget about that too. That is a great example.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, any final thoughts on Chris Paul?
No, sir. I'm extremely excited. Watching that 2015 playoff game got me even more hyped because I know he's not the same guy, but he was still elite.